Let's talk about this issue of a shortage and who we're prioritizing and why those groups being prioritized.
Well, we're prioritizing like we did in the beginning of this COVID, those with symptoms, those on the frontline workers, those in the senior communities. But, to me, not having enough testing is really, making us more vulnerable. And quite frankly, this is a countrywide and statewide situation that we're in. I understand states like New York had stockpiled a lot of the testing and things like that. And quite frankly, we all, both sides of the aisle, no matter where you stand on opening businesses or not, everyone agrees we need to do more testing. We need to do more testing to make sure that, 85% of the people that don't have the symptoms, we make sure we find them. And so we can get them isolated and stay away from those that are the most vulnerable, primarily our elderly with underlying conditions. But by having less tests or not enough tests, instead, the governor should have been trying to get us more tests in the state of California. Instead, he's much more focused on which businesses can stay open instead of getting us the more tests. Yes, we're having to focus, and that's what we're having to do statewide. But in punishing businesses that are following the protocol, punishing businesses that have flattened the curve, have been wearing the mask, have made the investments and everything else. Those entities, are feeling the brunt of, quite frankly, I think a lack of leadership of not getting us enough tests. Other states have done it. We are behind the curve and instead punishing those that are doing the right things, and instead of making sure that we have the tests that are necessary so that we can protect our most vulnerable.
Right. And not to mention the fact that with this virus, we've seen so many different symptoms. And if people are not going to be able to get tested or get a quick turnaround, they're just going to go back to their normal lives if they're feeling somewhat okay. And we all know, how contagious it is. So, and to be clear, this is not just a problem in San Diego or in California.
True.
We're seeing this across the nation right now. And explain to me, if you can, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it would seem when we hear all these stories out there in the media of politicians and professional athletes getting tested multiple times, and yet the average person, an essential worker who's around a lot of people to get their job done and provide food for their family, is having difficulty getting a test. It doesn't seem to make sense.
That's very true. There's quite a few multiple tests that are out there, but everyone agrees we need to keep doing those. And so the focus instead, is what to those who want to keep shutting down businesses and blaming them, is like, no, we need more testing. We need to have that capability. And unfortunately, leadership from the governor's office is more about who can stay open and who can't. And businesses that have been complying and putting in the investments are having to shut down again, when really the focus should be on, we need more testing. We need to put the investment into getting, more testing here in California for the reagents and things like that.
Okay, so
and yes, there's been a big demand, but some states have been ahead of the curve in making sure that they have those testing capabilities. And we unfortunately are more focused on shutting down businesses. And so, we are going to do the best we can with what we have. And there's been a couple of businesses here in San Diego County that have stepped up and offered us, more testing capability. But really, this is, not just a localized issue. It's more about, where our priorities should be, and should be on keep people testing so that we can protect the most vulnerable. Because, quite frankly, it's much more, we're a much more vulnerable society by not testing as we are somebody sitting down and getting a haircut. We absolutely, this was pretty upsetting to me that we don't have enough tests, and the state of California is in the position we are, and we're focusing more on shutting down businesses than having the proper amount of tests.
I'm with you on that, in case you couldn't tell. So is the message just simply to our governor, hey, we're one of those states that is constantly being talked about with these rising cases. We need to find a way to stockpile more tests and get it done so that we can have these tests. Yes. and have a quicker turnaround.
Absolutely, and Cuomo did it in New York, and I think we should be doing it as well, instead of punishing businesses that are doing all the right things, instead of surgically going after just a few bad apples. We need to let our businesses thrive. As you can tell, there's a lot of enthusiasm out there for businesses that want to stay open. They're willing to do the right things. As your earlier segment with Imperial Beach, everybody's willing to do the right things. But if they're going to get cut off at the knees because the state hasn't made sure that we have the tests that we need, everybody just kind of shrugs their shoulders, nods her, it just throws her head, shakes her head and say, what can we do? So, I think it's really up to the state to make sure we have the test equipment for all counties in California.
All right, Supervisor Desmond, thank you so much.